things around you. Oh, what you gonna love inside of you? Oh, when you gonna hear his revelation? Oh, oh, let it move inside of you. Welcome, beautiful souls, to Infinite Perspectives, where voices become vision and vision becomes transformation. I am Linda Boston, founder of Peer Incorporated, author, actress, community builder, and co founder of Infinite Perspectives. Normally, this is the moment where my amazing co founder and co host, Michelle Diamond, the voice, would be joining me. Unfortunately, due to an unexpected family emergency, Michelle is unable to be with us this evening. Please keep her and her family lifted in your thoughts and prayers as they navigate what requires her presence tonight. The beautiful thing about partnership, though, is that when one of us needs to be present elsewhere, the other carries the torch forward. And tonight we do exactly that. On behalf of Michelle and myself, welcome to Infinite Perspectives. Tonight's conversation is about what we carry, the stories we inherit, the wisdom we inherit, the wounds we inherit, and the healing we choose to pass forward. Because every generation leaves something behind. The question is, what are we carrying forward? We often think inheritance is about land and property, money, possessions. But some of our greatest inheritances are unseen, like language and memory, tradition, identity, belief, and healing. Tonight, we explore the sacred intersections of birth, storytelling, ancestral wisdom, motherhood, and voice. Sometimes what we carry forward determines what future generations become. Excuse me. Infinite Perspectives is proudly brought to you by Peer Incorporated, Next Level Promotion, a division of Infinite Perspectives brand, Moniker Enterprises, Carlotta Cole, the brand, and Unlimited Networks Property Management. So tonight, we welcome Raina White, mother, writer, doula, communication scholar, community builder, and may I say, my beautiful goddaughter, a woman whose work exists in the intersection of birth and storytelling, healing, and ancestral remembrance. And while Michelle cannot be with us this evening, she has and was deeply excited about this conversation and helped to shape tonight's discussion. Because beyond titles, beyond roles, and beyond accomplishments, tonight asks something deeper. What do we owe the generations that came before us? And what responsibility do we carry toward those yet to come? Raina, my darling, welcome to Infinite Perspectives.
What a welcome. Thank you, Auntie Linda. I'm honored to be here.
You know, you're a writer, a communication scholar, a storyteller. So before we discuss birth work and what role has voice played in your own becoming?
That's such a powerful question. And as I'm sitting here reading the lower third, the ticker, I'm like, did I call myself all these things or did Michelle write this? And I know that this is language that I use, but sometimes I play small. And my mom always says to me, don't throw dust on your divinity. But it is
Mm,
so hard for me sometimes to honor my voice, honor who I am, honor my gifts. And so I'm reading this like, wow, you are these things. I think that voice is so important, and it's interesting that I follow in your footsteps, Auntie Linda. Went to school for broadcast journalism,
yeah.
and I could not stand to hear the sound of my voice. And I was like, how could I major in this? I had to edit reporter packages and all the things, and I could not bear to hear my voice. And I recognized that that was spiritual for me. It wasn't just like, ooh, I don't really like that. I had to do work around opening my throat chakra, voicing my concerns, voicing when I was uncomfortable. I've historically been somebody who would just sit with the pain instead of saying, "Oh, that water's too hot," or "Oh, I don't like the way that feels."
Mhm.
Um, so I have since college been kind of sitting with how I activate and honor my voice. I think that birth really brought that to the forefront for me, amplified it, because I had Mama Maiwa was my first doula, and she talked to me about not screaming in labor, not using your voice in that way because you draw the baby back up, right? You scare the baby, and it's just not productive, even though labor can be excruciating. She said, I need you to moan deeply, like groan, moan deeply. And I was like, in front of people? And so I was so uncomfortable with that, but I also was in so much pain with each labor that I said, well, I'm gonna just come back to that because that helped. The vibration helped. And it took me practice to get used to hearing my own voice. I even told my youngest two, their doula, I said, I'm afraid to hear my voice in this way. Can you do it with me? My husband did it with me. So just getting comfortable with my voice has been a practice. The physical voice, but also the spiritual voices that tell me, that make me anxious or say that I'm not enough or am I qualified to be on platforms
Mhm.
like this.
Mhm.
It's a discipline and a practice for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's powerful. Being in broadcasting, I used to say the same thing, and then I got used to my voice.
Yeah.
Um, we're both Virgos, so share
Yes.
the same birth date, right? so, so we know what that means. What
Hmm.
stories were you carrying before you ever began writing?
What voices was I hearing before I
What
began
what
writing?
what stories
Mm.
you carrying before you ever began writing?
So I think that I am always called to remember the words of Nikki Giovanni, who
Mm,
says, I'm writing to stay in touch with my ancestors. So I may not have framed things in that way, but I've always felt very connected to my ancestors, my maternal lineage. And so I was carrying their stories. But I also, when I finished my master's in 2025 or 4, one of my favorite classes was really grounded in women's studies and communication. And I learned about gender scripts. And these are the scripts that our mothers or that really adults in society teach us about how to be. How we experience girlhood and womanhood were really central to the course. And so it's those teachings we get that say red polish is for fast girls, or you have to be married to do this thing, or a woman's place is here, or women are supposed to be subservient or soft, or that's not ladylike, or any of those things that kind of take at our autonomy and our agency. I was carrying those scripts as well and recognized over the last 5 years or so that I had to just do away with some of that stuff and start writing my own story.
hmm
I also was politicized early, but I would say I'm much more radical now, of course, than I was then. But I was carrying the voices of church members, the voices of political leaders, the voices of family. And I'll be 35 in August, and I am just now figuring out how to carry my own voice.
Did you hear what you just said? Hear what you just said? That's
Yeah,
powerful. There are many people that don't even take the time to realize that they haven't been speaking their own voice.
yeah.
I'm 150. and I'm just now feeling comfortable with it. You know.
Yeah.
Do people, and I worked in broadcasting for 20 some years.
Hmm.
Do people underestimate the power of language then? For example, is its ability to shape identity and memory and reality itself? Do they understand?
Absolutely, absolutely. Professionally, spiritually, academically, communications and rhetoric are taken for granted. I absolutely hate when people refer to communications as soft skills because it flattens the impact of what writing and communications does. And I'm gonna just throw some shade and say I meet all of these brilliant people, all of these professional people who cannot write, who cannot shape story, who can't articulate what a program is, and that's so powerful. And I recognize that writing, communications, the power of the voice in this way is an art form, but it's also a way that we keep culture. So the griots, the storytellers, they have their place in the African cosmology. I think storytelling impacts everything. It impacts how we do business. It impacts how we do healthcare and how we access it. It impacts how we approach family, for example. I see language as a self determining tool and a tool for community building. So how we define ourselves, how we name ourselves, all of that's rooted in language and communication. And I think about folks, Black folks, who are brought here unwillingly, and how that power was usurped from us, being able to name ourselves, define ourselves. And when we use language to create the systems that we want, the families that we want, the partnerships that we want, the spirituality that we want, that is resistance.
Mhm. Something that I've seen that is heartbreaking to me. My daughter Aziza showed me an Instagram post or a Snapchat post, one of them kind of posts. And it's a young man that's got a sentence on an index card, a simple sentence on an index card, asking young women, young men to read the index card. And
Hmm.
they can't read it. They can't articulate the words on there. And that's heartbreaking because that's language.
Yeah.
It's important. You need to be able to read it. You need to be able to write it. You need to be able to articulate it. You need to know what it means,
Yeah.
navigate through this world. So, how has writing helped you better understand yourself?
That's a great question. I'm not somebody who I think people assume that I'm a journaler, that I just go home and have a cup of tea and journal. I don't write in those ways. It's really, unfortunately, I've spent a lot of time writing for school and then academia and then for work. It is very rare that I get to write for myself, and that's something that I'm trying to do a better job of doing. But I do get spiritual downloads, and it's like I have to write this. I have to get it
Yes.
out. I have dreams, and I'm like, okay, I'm clear about the assignment. And so it helps. It purges me, and I'm somebody who, if I write a piece that just had to come out, whether that's poetry, an essay, whatever it is, I can't write for a while after that because I've given it all. So
Yeah.
it's definitely therapeutic for me, even though it's not something I do daily for myself. But it has also been a catalyst for me and a challenge in terms of what can I create, what stories can I create here.
Yeah.
Um, I shared with you that I am really big on matrilineal healing, so healing
Yeah.
between women from generation to generation. And so, what I've been doing recently that's really healing, I think, for me, for my mother, and specifically my daughters, is hearing my mother's stories. And she will say, I don't think my life's that special. It's all these things are kind of boring to me. And I'm sitting there with my mouth on the floor, like, what? This is traumatic. This is juicy. This is powerful. It's all the things. And those are stories that need to be told. And so, writing her story has honestly helped me recognize some of the harm that happened to her, some of the neglect, but also how intentional she was to make sure that I experienced girlhood differently, and how intentional I am as a result of her life and making sure that my children experience, specifically my daughters, experience girlhood differently.
Yeah, that's deep. I know your mother. She's a good friend of mine. She's my sister.
Yes.
Her experience in education
Hmm.
has guided me to unfold arts infused literacy.
Mhm.
And I don't know if I could have effectively done it without consulting her.
Yes.
Uh, People were very satisfied with what I was able to bring to the table when I was in Michigan, and so that's inherited stories that
Mhm.
I have that are connected to you. You see how all this stuff weaves together? You
Yes.
know, the stories we inherit often shape us
Yes.
till we become brave enough to tell our own, you know?
Mhm. Ashe.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Many people many people desire the finished work, but
Mhm.
few honor the process.
Yeah.
So what I need to ask you now, because I'm so into the creative process, and I'm Michelle and I talk about how the creativity helps us to become who we are.
Mhm.
What has creativity taught you about patience?
Mm. Well, one has taught me that I'm very impatient.
No, that's right. So
I want to get to the end results. I want to move into the house and it be furnished. I want everything in its place. Virgo energy. And so I am starting. My children really teach me new ways of imagining and being, and they require a different level of patience. And they can also be very literal. And so parenting them helps me to slow down. Like, okay, let me explain this to you and explain why it's not safe. Let's have a conversation. Everything is a dang on conversation in my house, and I'm burnt out from it, honestly. But I'm trying to meet them where they are, understand where they are in terms of development, and so that requires patience. It requires me to slow down. I move a lot slower these days than a 21, 25 year old woman, not just physically, but because I know how precious time is. I know how important it is to honor the creative process, and so I slow down. Creativity has taught me that there are so many ways to exist, so many ways to be, um, and that sometimes we limit and stifle our creativity because of those voices, what
mm,
other people want for us, what our parents want for us, what other artists are doing. And so creativity has taught me that there is room for all of us, and that we have to be patient in our journey, but also that even though there are millions of writers in the world, nobody tells stories the way I do. Nobody tells stories the way you do. And so that reminds me, creativity reminds me that this work is a part of our destiny.
and it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yes.
And I don't care how old you are. You got to be patient.
Yeah.
I don't have a carte blanche to skip over patience just because I'm older than you. I have
Yeah.
to be patient too. Yeah.
For sure. And I don't, if I could add, I don't share this often, but my spirit says that I need to say it. Sometimes I feel like I am not where I should be in my life. And I know that that is because of the societal construct we live in and capitalism and all the things. But sometimes I feel like because of my trajectory, having had this elite education and all this access and being connected to such and such, that I should have published a book by now, that I should have gotten an Emmy by now, that I should have reached this level of validation that I haven't. And so I'm also coming to terms with that and who that's for and what voices are telling me that, and reminding myself that some of the greatest writers were what I'm seeing on social media is late bloomers. I'm
Uh-huh.
thinking about when Toni Morrison wrote Beloved.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about Octavia Butler. I'm thinking about them in their prime.
Mhm.
And so it takes time. And I am not necessarily aspiring to be like those predecessors, but whatever it is, my story's not done yet. And so I'm trying to just ground myself in the journey.
So, with that in mind, because what you said is very powerful, people need to hear that. Uh, Probably 90% of our listeners would say the same thing you just said.
Hmm.
They don't feel like they're where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So, a lot of movement through our purpose requires us to listen.
Hmm.
I wrote a song about it. Silence is the key, right?
Yeah.
you know, You have to wait and be silent long enough to hear
Yeah.
something speak to you. What has writing taught you about listening?
Mm. What has writing taught me about listening? So I hear my dad right now saying one of his favorite Bible verses, which is quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. He will tell us that all the time. And while I'm not necessarily focused on being angry, I recognize the value of listening to understand. Not always feeling like I need to rebut or chime in, but listening. So in this season, I do less talking. I talk when I have something to say, and then that shows up in my writing as well. So, like I said, I'm not writing every day. I'm not publishing all the time. I'm writing when I have something to say, and I write when I get those spiritual downloads from God, and it could be a dream. It just happens. Or when I hear my ancestors saying, "I need you to do this thing," that's really when I'm activated. And so I also practice Onishe Ifa, which is an indigenous traditional African religion that requires a lot of patience too, and is a discipline. And it requires us to sit at the feet of our priests, of our aluos and our aloris, and hear these divine messages and take them in. And folks' first reactions often are either I don't want to do that, that's too much work, or they don't really listen to what was being said. They react, and so that practice has also informed my writing because everything around this spirituality is around destiny. Is the thing you're doing connected to your destiny? Are you writing this article because such and such is writing it? Are you writing it because it's timely, or is this in alignment with your destiny? So
Mm,
listening has made me save my craft and my energy in some ways.
yeah, yeah. I'm going through a similar thing. I'm writing something right now that is heavy,
Yeah.
co-writing it with Caleb, right?
Okay.
My
Yeah.
nephew and my niece Takira.
Beautiful.
I need them to look at it to make sure, Takira reads everything. So she's my beta reader.
Hmm.
And it's something about going through the process that that helps me to know I'm releasing something.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's almost like it's almost like the divine consciousness and the characters that I've put in this story wake me up and say, I gotta say this. I
Yeah.
gotta say. So can creativity become a form of healing?
Absolutely.
I bet.
Absolutely. Not just, I think my goal is for the folks who read my work or who interrogate my work to be healed in some way.
Mhm.
But it's also healing for me. It's healing for my mother. It's healing for my daughters in action, for my children in action. My
Mhm.
father has been an ancestor for almost 16 years, and I know that some of the stories that I've told, the ways that I've been vulnerable in my work, are healing for him. And so, absolutely, writing is healing. I know an artist here, a visual artist, indigenous artist, who paints beautifully, and she's having health challenges, specifically with her hands right now. And she said, I would paint with my feet if I have to. That's how much I love it. That's how much I love writing. Like I am called to do it, even if it's not something I do every day. My twin brother, Che, literally draws every single day of his life.
Yeah.
We
I'm
have
trying
been
to hire. Listen, I'm trying to hire the brother.
Yes, he's in high demand right now. I can't
No.
the last time I saw my twin, but I mean a week is a long time for us. But he draws every single day, and he is so disciplined. And it's like I can call and say, "Do you want to hang out? Do you want to go to the movies?" No, I got to draw. This is where I need to be. And so his artistry shows up in a different way for him, and it's literally therapeutic and helps ground him. He's someone who navigates ADHD, and so that grounds him. My art heals me more so because I become a practitioner of the stories that I write about.
Mhm. So, so now it makes me wonder what happens. when we stop forcing creation and begin collaborating with it,
Yeah.
you know.
I think that it becomes more natural when you're in the flow, when you don't force the creativity. And that isn't to say that we're not disciplined. Like, I certainly, part of being a good writer is being a good reader. And so I'm challenging myself now to read more. I'm even listening to audiobooks. And I told myself, I don't have the attention span for that. I have fallen in love with it, but I recognize the narrator matters. Like, I need a good narrator. So right now I'm listening to Parable of the Sower by, of course,
Hmm.
Octavia Butler. And Lynn Tickpen is the narrator.
Yeah.
He has such a rich voice. So
Yes.
I'm like, oh, I'm here for this. And so I am getting into the habit of being disciplined, but also gracious with myself. I have 3 children, and 2 are little.
Mm.
I work a hectic job. I'm also a birth worker and a wife and other things, and so I cannot write every day. I simply cannot, and that's
Hmm.
okay. But what I'm always doing is giving birth to something, whether it's physical. I'm done physically birthing my own baby. But I'm either helping somebody else give birth, or I'm birthing a program, I'm birthing an idea. And this current thing that I'm birthing, I don't know when it'll be done, and that's okay. Excuse me. Telling my mom's story is so important to me that I'm handling it with care, and just flowing with it. And we're not having like formal meetings. She'll just start talking and I start taking notes
Yeah.
because it's so rich, and documenting that oral history even is just really been beautiful for us.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. I can't wait to see what comes out of that.
Yeah.
It'll be fantastic.
Thank
Sometimes creation is not asking us to produce.
you.
Sometimes it's asking us just to pay attention,
I
you
should.
know,
Yes, yes.
pay attention, just stop for a moment. And it's wonderful because I had a conversation with Takira, who is Lisa's youngest daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She's 20. That
Wow.
ought to age you a little bit.
Yes.
But she said to me that I find it important not to pick up my phone for 30 minutes or so in the morning. I
Yeah.
find it important not to pick it up, not to tap into Snapchat and snap. She says by the time she gets on there, some people have had conversations for hours, and she
Wow.
found that she and her group of friends had communicated over 1,600 days in
Yeah.
a row. That's 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
We've got to really realize the importance of taking time to listen, to
Yeah.
create, to be silent, to love ourselves, to be patient with ourselves. So now, I know of a wonderful aspect of your life that I am so impressed with, about birth work and sacred thresholds and all these wonderful things. And I remember you when you were an itty bitty little thing. Okay. As a doula,
Yeah.
you stand beside people at one of life's most sacred thresholds.
Mhm.
So, what has birth taught you about trust?
Wow. So birth work can honestly be triggering for a number of reasons for the birth worker and for the birthing person, because so much comes up, as you know, in pregnancy. And so, in terms of, I try to teach my clients that we have to build trust. So there's that dynamic of being able to trust your care team, but also one of the things that I think we have gotten away from because of societal conditioning is our inability to trust ourselves. And so birth work has taught me the power of the body, the
Mhm.
power of trusting ourselves and knowing what we can handle, knowing when we need the epidural, knowing when we need everybody to get out the room, knowing when we need people to stop touching us. And so that came to the surface for me in my births, but I've also had clients who may have experienced harm in some ways. And so maybe they didn't want that male doctor in the room. Maybe they didn't want to breastfeed, whatever it is. It teaches us, birth work teaches us to trust that our village is going to show up and support us and advocate and use that voice when we are unable to. but also trust that we're making the right decisions for our bodies, and that we know what we're feeling. I think that birth work also requires a certain level of surrender, excuse me, from everyone. You got to surrender to what the baby wants. Everybody comes in with these beautiful birth plans, or not everybody. I actually help folks with birth plans as well. But you have this idea: I'm not going to poop. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to have a dainty birth, and then it is just all primitive. And so
Mhm.
it requires us to surrender to what is happening, surrender to what is best for the baby. And I would also add that it requires us to interrogate our shame, which also keeps us from trusting ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. That's powerful. That's really powerful. I'm thinking about giving birth, and that's some deep stuff, you
Yes,
know.
it is.
What has supporting birthing people taught you about community?
It's taught me that sometimes we don't have um, the power of our voices, and that going back to that trust, we have to curate safety within our communities so that they advocate and do the labor for us when we cannot. Now, I've studied a number of methods of birthing, and I am all about agency. Whatever you want to do, mama. And so some folks have had unassisted births, which means nobody's in the room, nobody's helping me. It's me and the baby or the babies. I am not about that life. I want all the help I can get. But that it took time for me to get comfortable with that. And Mama Maiwa helped to ease me into my first birth so that I could, and I was not in a relationship with my oldest daughter's father at the time, but I knew that I needed all the support I could get physically. And so I surrendered to that. Like, if anything else, hold this belly up. At least do that, brother.
Mhm.
I needed my mom there. And folks feel shame for different reasons around birth. You are exposed. I didn't care about none of that. I was just in pain, and I wanted my community to help alleviate it. And so
Mhm.
it's taught me that folks can have different roles in our communities and in the birthing space, in the birthing space or in the communities at large. But also, support may come from unexpected places, and that's okay. And sometimes supports look different than we thought it would.
Mhm.
So, my second and third birth, I was with my husband, and so he is an E5 practitioner. He's a Babalawo, he's a Reiki healer, all these things. So it felt different. It was literally like, I can trust that you can help carry me through this. I can
Mhm.
surrender and not try to keep an act on or anything. I'm telling you that I'm in pain and get me some drugs. And he's like, absolutely. So it was
Yeah.
more liberating. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. Uh, it is powerful to hear you talk about this. And I know that society overall has something to learn from the experience. Uh, I didn't have a doula, and having and trying to give birth by yourself without anybody sound like something in a movie,
Yeah.
and that don't even sound real. But I'm wondering, do modern societies underestimate the sacredness of birth?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I bet
Yeah, I am. So a big part of my practice is choice.
you.
So
Mhm.
if you want to deliver in a hospital, that is your choice. If you want to deliver at home, that is your choice. If you want drugs, if you want the epidural, that is your choice. I want especially Black and brown women to feel like they have access to the things that they need. That's first. Um, but I also think that some birthing experiences have become microwaved because they're trying to get you out of that hospital. If you have the slightest complication, they're like, "Oh, C-section." And I am so grateful that more doulas are being trained, more midwives are and Black midwives are emerging to say, "Let's just try a different position. Let's go for a walk before we cut the belly open." And
Mhm.
so the hospitals are also very sterile, and cleanliness is important, big Virgo energy. But sometimes the sterileness and the bright lights and the 50 medical staff people takes away from what can feel, um, it takes away from it feeling natural. Now, I birthed all three of my children in a hospital, and I've only supported hospital births so far. what's important to me is to set the atmosphere. That is my job. So if that's asking them to dim the lights or to have essential oils, I want to forget myself, and I want the birthing folks to forget that we're in a hospital and feel
Mhm.
like we have agency here and that we can be comfortable. But I do think that that folks forget how sacred birthing can be.
Mhm.
Um, even that. So I part of my practice is also bringing that partner in so they understand how
Yeah.
sacred this is.
Talk them through that. Yeah. And
Yes.
I'm wondering, so now as birthing has changed over the years, because at one point they said once you had a C-section, you could never give a natural birth.
Hmm.
Has that changed? Is that changing? They're making it so that it's easy.
Yeah,
That's
it's called a VBAC now when you have a C-section and then you won't have a vaginal birth. Lots of more OBs are open to that,
mhm.
and midwives are really going to advocate that you get
Yeah,
that VBAC. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. What wisdom do mothers carry that often goes unheard?
Mm, wow. So it's funny. Shay and I, my twin brother and I, call my mom the Oracle because she has this wisdom.
Yeah.
And as a teenager, as a young person, I wasn't listening to that. But
Hmm.
now I make decisions with her in my mind. I can hear her. And sometimes I'll be honest, that is required. I have to eat the meat and spit out the bones sometimes because I am still the queen of my castle. I'm still emerging as a woman here. And so I have to make some decisions that she might not agree with, might not like. But most of the time I hear the oracle in my head. I hear her wisdom. She is our moral compass. And so I think about sometimes she may not say the thing. She you make the decision, but I can see her face. I can see the disappointment,
Hmm.
and that sometimes redirects my decision. I do think I was fortunate to grow up with a mom who was very vocal, very verbal, but my grandmothers were not. So if I could center my grandmothers, I would say some of the things they taught me, some of the gendered scripts were self abandonment.
Hmm.
It was centering men. It was not feeling worthy. So my grandmother would never say that, but she taught me that. She
Hmm.
also taught me expansive love and caring for the least of these. If you came to my grandmother's house, you were going to leave full.
Hmm.
You will be physically nourished and spiritually nourished. So she taught me that too.
Yeah.
But she also um, abandoned herself from the time she was young. So
Yeah.
again, that's not something that she voiced, but it's definitely something that I learned from her and something that I've carried.
Hmm. I remember your grandmother fondly,
Yeah.
and yeah, she could cook.
Yes.
What does it mean to create spaces where people feel seen and supported, empowered in one's life,
Hmm.
vulnerable moments? When they're most vulnerable, what does it mean to create spaces for these people?
So I can talk about how this shows up for me specifically
Mhm.
in birthing because I think that's really the most vulnerable you can be.
Yes.
And I want folks to feel like they can surrender to the pain, they can ask for what they need and not feel like I felt like, and I've met moms who felt like I have to prove that I can do this. I have to prove that I can do this unmedicated. I have to prove that I can have labor for 4 hours and have the baby, all these things. And so creating a space that says, I'll be your soft place to land and the permission that you just have to show up and do this. Get the baby earthside. You don't have to be so rigid about this. Surrender.
Hmm.
Um, I will also add that I am deeply interested in death work because
Hmm.
that is sacred too.
Yes.
I think when folks are vulnerable, when they're giving birth, when they're transitioning, what's really important is that we make sure they have dignity.
Hmm.
Um, I want folks to feel safe and dignified in whatever transitions they're going through. And I feel like I'm talking about my mom a lot, and I know she's just probably so bashful listening in. But I also am inspired to get into death work because of her. She is the death doula. She's not going to call herself that, but she is. She knows
Yes,
when
she is.
When someone's about to pass, she knows.
Mhm.
She's always rallied the family. She's always been there to bereave people. I actually have seen people take their last breaths multiple times with my mom. I didn't want her
Yes.
to be alone, but something in me also said that I just needed to go. And so
Needed to.
I watched that as a child multiple times and fell apart. But I also hold how sacred it is to
It
watch
is
somebody
very.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very sacred. She was with me, I do believe, when my mother made
Hmm.
her transition, and I've seen many transitions. And there's a reason why you're given that gift.
Yeah.
I have considered being a death doula, but I'm trying to do these other things. So
Yeah.
it's like, you've got time. Go on and do everything that you want to do. We all have the time that God gives us because we're going to be here until we do it. All
Hmm.
right.
I say.
Birth is not simply the arrival of a child, it's the birth of a new version of everyone involved.
Yes.
The transition in passing is very similar too.
Yeah.
Uh, it is those two sacred, there's nothing like those two sacred times.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, you speak about matrilineal healing,
Hmm.
tending our mother's gardens. That phrase is absolutely beautiful when I hear that.
Yeah.
What does that really mean to you? You've talked about it a little bit this evening, but I want to know the meat of what it means to you.
So I was inspired to frame it that way from Alice Walker, who has a book called Teaching in Search of Our Mother's Gardens.
Mhm.
And I think about my mom's garden a lot and all the roses, which are the children, and all the life, and how we celebrate that. We
Mhm.
celebrate that with mothers, but also her thorns and her weeds, and how I don't think it's necessary to remove those things, but to give those things tenderness and honor and care and light too. I think about the dirt and the soil, which represents all the things that she's cultivated. And so as I talked to her about her childhood and how she navigated being a teenager and early womanhood, um, it exposes the parts of her garden that didn't get the light, not just the roses and the beautiful flowers, but those parts that needed to be pruned. And I think that's important. But in exploring her garden, it also has helped me create my own. So I actually wrote a poem when I did a matrilineal healing training out of the University of Southern California, and I wrote this poem. If I could share it,
Yes,
um,
please. Please
so
do.
it's actually called Supreme because I joke about. I don't know if you're into American Horror Story, but
Yeah.
Coven is my favorite season, and I call my mom the Supreme. So the name of this poem is entitled that. In my mother's garden, the soil is rich. Some seasons it doesn't even require water, but it produces fruit. In my mother's garden, there are roses and African violets, and there are weeds too, such beautiful weeds. In my mother's garden, there is always a scent of home, and there are thorns, shields that have protected her, and sometimes made it hard to reach her, to touch her. And in my mother's garden, there are seeds. Planted by her mama and her mama and her mama, this garden has sustained us. This garden has survived capture and trading across oceans. This garden has survived Detroit winters. At times, this garden has not been seen or told it was beautiful, and this garden has given away nourishment without the return of hands to tend to it. This garden hasn't always known tenderness or trust or care, but the garden, my mother's garden, is always there. And my mother's garden has pruned me, a rose, who now waters her garden and mine. My mother's garden is the covenant. My mother is the supreme, and her magic flows through the garden and through mine and through me. I am the returned hands who've come to tend to her garden. I bring the tenderness and trust and care. I heal this land. I remind it of its glory and its majesty, that it is Eden, heaven on earth. I call my mother's garden by her name, home, what it has always been, what it will always be for those who search for it. In my mother's garden is the covenant. My mother is the supreme, and her magic flows through the garden and through mine and through me. I dug the soil in my mother's garden and I found pain and suffering. I found flowers afraid to blossom, plants afraid to grow, shame. Four mothers who didn't know how to water her. But I dug the soil in my mother's garden and I found resilience too. In love and hope, I found joy, power to build, to birth, to be. I dug the soil in my mother's garden and I found my own and my children, who I now water from the supreme source. My mother's garden lacks nothing. In all ways, it is abundant. Oh, Auntie Linda, you always crying. And then I'm going to be crying. No.
It takes a long time to realize the value of a moment like that and what it means and the power of the experience.
Yeah.
For me to know you for as long as I've known you, to be there when your mother has been through some of her hardest times. So now it makes me wonder, okay, forgive me,
No, no.
because that's beautiful. And you've always written like that. This is
Thank
not something new coming from you. Your writings have always been powerful like that. That's why they always calling you and asking you to do it, and asking you to speak, and asking you to come. It's
you.
like singing. It's like a beautiful voice.
Thank you.
It takes a lot of time and a lot of intuition and emotion and soul and spirit to come forth with something like that.
Thank you.
How much of who we are was planted before we arrived?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question. Because you were here before you got here.
Mm-hmm.
So, how much of who we are was planted before we arrived?
So I look at this two ways, and thank you for the affirmation, Auntie Linda. I really receive it, and I again sometimes have a hard time seeing myself the way other people do, and so I am always taken aback when somebody celebrates me in that way. But I am thinking about um, destiny again, and in the Yoruba tradition, we say that you get your destiny when you're in Orun or heaven. And so I was meant to be a writer forever. In this lifetime, I was meant to show up as a writer. Um, but I also think that the way in which we are born, our parents' ideas for us, our family's ideas for us, they shape who we are. And so sometimes we just have to sift through the weeds and find our gardens.
Mm-hmm.
I think about those gender scripts again and the how to show up in the world, how to be a lady, how to keep home, and how that predates our existence. And we get to determine what we want to keep. But I also recently told my oldest daughter, Z, that I've already carried her children. And she was like, "What? How did you do that?" I said, "You were born, you had your ovaries in my womb, and you already had, destiny in your ovaries." And she was like, "So you've already carried your grandbabies too?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And so I think about that DNA and those stories that my grandchildren will get. And one of them, you may hear one of the babies screaming now. That's the Scorpio. I have no control over that one. Um, Yes, I've got a Cancer, a Aries, and a Scorpio.
Yeah.
And I'm a Virgo, but my husband's a Virgo too. So we're always like, "Whoo, these kids are hit." And we try to ground them. But I think about what the stories I want them to inherit, and I don't always get it right, but I know that I do my damnedest as a mom, um, and I do work consistently to undo some of the things I learned so that they can be free Black children. I wouldn't be in a position to do this though if my mom didn't do her work. and if her grandmother didn't do her work. So I love my grandma, my mom's mom, but I recognize how abandoned she was and how that trauma impacted her children. But I also think about her mom and the ways that she may not have been able to protect my grandmother when she was a little girl, but she showed up for her in adulthood when she was navigating an abusive marriage to my mother's father. I don't call him granddaddy, but my mother's father. It was my great grandmother Storm who said, "I will step to hell and back with you." She was the one carrying the baseball bat. She was the one practicing hoodoo. She was the one reclaiming. And so I think in some ways, those traditions skip generations.
Hmm.
But part of the story for me is the reclamation.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, these young people are not the young people. First of all, they say black folks ain't the black folks from the 60s.
Hmm.
I agree with that. But these young children are not the young children we were. Because what you told your daughter, my grandson came to me and said it to me. He said,
Hmm.
if my mother was in your tummy, that means I was in there too.
Yep.
Now, that's some deep thinking.
Yes, it
I
is.
want him to hold on to that depth forever
Yes.
because it helps to define who he is. Nobody could tell him that. He figured that out on his own.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, what does
And-
it mean to tend a garden that we did not plant? You've talked about that garden.
yeah. So my mom is somebody who will work to the bone.
Hmm.
She will do everything in her power to keep her word. She will exhaust herself for people. And so
Hmm.
I've learned that from her.
Hmm.
Part of me tending to her garden is giving her permission to rest, reminding her that she is worthy and that she doesn't have to work in these ways, reminding her that she can accept goodness. That is really hard for her. My mom will be 70 on June 28th, and she's so excited. And she's like, I just want a steak dinner and a cake. My brother and I are like, you can get whatever you want. Even my husband's like, you only turn 70 once. What do you want? She's like, I don't want anybody making a big old fuss. And so we're teaching her because millennials don't celebrate.
Receive. Yeah.
Okay. Don't
Receive.
celebrate. Yes.
Yeah.
Receive it. Her air is actually out right now. And I've called to have it repaired, but there's a delay. And so Che and I were in a chat with her today, and she threatened to block Che because he was so insistent. And he said, let us get you the hotel room. You don't have to be uncomfortable. He sent 20 messages like yield, just yield. And she said, I'm gonna block you. And so, while yes, the hotel costs money, but I see our mothers as, again, the supreme beings, those voices that we carry. I see them as the sources of life, not just my own, but all mamas. And so I honor that. My
Mhm.
husband's mother transitioned in 2018. And I told him, if your mama was here, I'd be treating her like this too, because there will be no you without her. And we should honor our black mama. So
Yeah.
I tending to her garden is teaching her new age care. And it's
Yeah.
bigger than get your mani pedis. I got my mom's first pedi a few years ago. It's more than that. It's
Mhm.
it has to be institutionalized. It's the permission to rest, the permission to say no. I told her, if you don't want the grandkids to come over this weekend, you could just say no. You could say no.
Yeah, yeah, you got the right to say no. That's you know, that's the healing of what may have been left unattended when you honor your mother. You just simply honor your mother and you take care of what was unattended in her life before that.
Yes.
What wisdom travels through the maternal line and what responsibility do we have to preserve it?
Wow, that's a powerful question. And I am immediately thinking about tradition. My mom is the matriarch of our family right now, and that is such a huge responsibility. But our family is so disjointed that it's requiring her to work extra hard. And I think that the maternal responsibility is around keeping the tradition, keeping the families, keeping the recipes, keeping the storytelling, keeping the ways of being. And I see that my grandmothers have passed certain things down that I, to this day, you
Mhm.
will not catch me with my purse on the floor because Hoodoo tradition says you're not gonna have no money if you leave your
Right,
pussy.
right, right, right. Yeah.
I do not sweep after birth. I stay in the house 6 weeks after birth. I can feel them when my neck is exposed, and we're in that in between season, and you got to cover your neck. But you also, the recipes, like I have made certain things of my grandmother's, and I've never seen a written recipe. But she was in that kitchen with me, and my mom was like, "This tastes just like mama's." And
Mm-hmm.
so that is, and I don't want to genderize it like only the women do this. It just so happens that that's how it is. Though those are the things that we've passed down to our daughters. And so while I will gladly give my son the hot water cornbread recipe, I do have a different expectation of my girls to yes, Cairo, 1 minute, I'm almost done. My assistant, my production assistant, yes.
Yes, your production assistant.
You was to her and her. The TV did that.
Oh, I think you're
All
sleeping.
right.
I don't know what you're talking about. Um,
That's all right. That's all right. That's
And
wonderful.
that was the TV doing that.
okay,
That
it's
started.
okay. 1 minute. Yeah,
Okay.
but I think that I want them to carry those familial things, but also spiritually. I mentioned that my great grandmother was a hoodoo practitioner. She may not have said that, but she was wearing bluing
Mm-hmm.
and having seances and doing the things.
Mm-hmm.
And so my grandmother would sit on the bed and say she was talking to her sisters who had passed. That's ancestral veneration. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think it is our responsibility to pass down those African traditions,
Yeah.
help our
Yeah.
kids understand there's nothing spooky about talking to your ancestors.
There's nothing spooky about that. In fact, having an altar is perfect. We got one up in
Yes,
here. You can bet.
absolutely we do too. Yes.
Yeah. And that's because healing is not always planting something new. Sometimes it's tending to what's already there.
Yes.
It's taking care of what's already there. My
Yes.
family, my ancestors are thick up in this house. I feel
Mhm.
them. Sometimes I hear my sister whisper in my ear, and
Yes.
it's mind blowing. What she said.
Yes.
That's something. Ancestral wisdom and reclamation. I'm telling you. You
Yes.
speak openly about reclaiming African traditional religion and ancestral wisdom. And I love that more than you know. We have to talk about that later.
Okay.
But what does reclamation mean to you?
This has been a powerful journey, having grown up in the church and in the Christian faith.
Mhm.
Um, but fortunately, being at fellowship, it was still African centered, and so the transition wasn't as drastic because we were already pouring libations, we were already doing ancestral veneration, but
Mhm.
there are some things in the tradition that are incongruent with how I grew up, and
Mhm.
so that required me to surrender, and to trust that just because it's different doesn't make it deficient, doesn't make it evil. There were still those voices, societal voices that says, if it's not Abrahamic, then it's not right.
Mhm.
And so reclaiming this tradition has I liken everything again to destiny. It's helped me to recognize that this was always part of my destiny, um, and the power and sacredness of doing things the old way, the way our ancestors did. So Ifa has been around for millennia, but so much of it is told through oral history. So you may not see the Odu in writing, you may not see certain things in writing, but because it requires you to sit at the feet of the elders and get the wisdom. And so reclaiming has taught me the importance of slowing down, but also one of the things that I struggle with in the Christian doctrine is this idea of being born into sin. And I think that sometimes that immediately makes us feel unworthy. And
Mhm.
so I had to undo a lot of that and recognize that though I am full of sin, I am still
Well,
worthy
that's sin,
of,
and sin is relative, but yeah. Mhm.
um, but I am still worthy of love, of belonging, of community, of connection, um, of a relationship with God. So reclaiming that has helped me to sift through religiosity really and ground myself in spirituality.
Yeah, what I have discovered over these years that I've been on this planet is that we come into this world perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We are deprogrammed.
Yeah.
So being born in iniquity, as people talk about, to me, that just means it was dark in there.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with darkness. There's nothing wrong with dark matter, black holes, black people.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that. How do, and I digress, I'm telling you my opinions, and I want you to know that this is truly about what your journey has been. How do people distinguish between inherited beliefs and inherited truths? Because belief has doubt in it, right?
Yeah.
So, how do people distinguish between inherited beliefs and inherited truth?
I think I'm always wrestling with that. I'm always interrogating. Is this something that I've been told and I actually accept? Is this something, a gender script or an inherited story that really resonates? Or what are my own thoughts about this? So I sometimes have what I call, or it's not actually what I call, I forgot the scholar, but cognitive dissonance. When you can't accept the new information, even though you align with it, because it doesn't align with what you have previously been taught. So one of the ways I separate that is by studying, by reading, by writing, but also in the Onisheche tradition, we believe in the Ori, which is your head, the closest thing to God, the Holy Spirit. So what does my Ori say about this? And sometimes that can be tricky too, because is this anxiety or is this my spirit telling me? Um, but I pray to my Ori and ask for clarity and ask that it guides me, and that's what I follow.
Yeah. And when you write, this is the powerful thing that I discovered uh, with my late husband, Arthur, is that the pen is the eye of the spirit.
Hmm.
So when you write, you're communicating with your creator divine consciousness.
Yes, yes.
Can reconnecting with ancestral wisdom truly help people reconnect with themselves?
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I remember the first time I had a reading with my Babalawo, and it was on Zoom during the pandemic, and he was in Florida. And I felt, he started praying in Yoruba,
Mhm.
and I felt goosebumps. I felt my ancestors around me. I felt what I had been told the Holy Spirit was supposed to feel like.
Mhm.
And I was so overwhelmed by it, but it made me realize, like, this is in alignment with my destiny, not just because it felt good, but because it felt true. And that helped me to recognize some things about trusting myself, trusting what I feel. So reclaiming the tradition. I'm sorry, your original question was.
Can reconnecting with our ancestral wisdom truly help us reconnect with ourselves?
Yes, and I think that our ancestors, they know us. They know what our destinies are, and so when
Mhm.
we connect with them, when we ask them questions, when we ask them for guidance, they show up. And sometimes I think that can be really scary, like when you ask for
Mhm.
clarity and they like, boom, here it is, and now the choice is up to you. But
Yeah.
it helps me to understand my journey and my destiny, in ways that my just human flesh could not on its own. um, but it also, I feel like listening and reclaiming African centered spirituality also gives instruction on how to move forward.
Yeah.
But I am reminded through Ifa that we are not alone, that God is with us, that the Orisha are with us, that our ancestors are with us, that we have mates on earth and in heaven to help us. So we don't have to carry it alone, and they will help guide us to where we're supposed to be.
Yeah. 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 That's powerful. What you're talking about is remembering and becoming.
Yeah.
You know, it's a process. It includes many things. And as far as I'm concerned, your journey through Christianity, you needed that to get to where
Yeah,
you are today. You
absolutely.
what responsibility comes with remembering? When we're in that process of remembering, what responsibility comes with that?
Wow, that is a heavy question, because I think a lot of folks assume if you practice a traditional religion, you get to do whatever you want. it's just willy nilly. It is not like that.
Mhm.
It's so much work and discipline. It requires us to study. It requires us to be disciplined. It requires us to be in community. It requires literal and physical sacrifices.
Mhm.
Um, it
And
requires,
to learn and know self.
yes,
Some work.
to get really clear with that. One of the things our spiritual leadership reminds us is reminds us of is that we are all connected to each other. So as
Yeah.
humans, yes, but if you look at the Ile, which is the symbolic, the same as the church, all the members, our destinies are tied to each other. And so that impacts how we treat one another, how we treat ourselves. And so I think that it requires a bit of ego surrender and
Mhm.
always checking in with ourselves and checking ourselves so that we can be in right relationship with others.
Mhm. Mhm. That even whispers to soul contracts
Yes,
because we didn't meet each other by accident. We were supposed
absolutely.
to connect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, what what would you say to someone who feels disconnected from their roots and their lineage or their voice? Where does the journey begin?
Mm. So I think one of I sometimes say I kind of was in a episode or I lost my mind, but my therapist would say I was just full of energy. I
Mhm.
was having a really, really tough time when I was pregnant with my oldest and I was navigating ending an abusive relationship and trying to come to terms with how I would parent and show up for this child. Z really, I joke and say she did witchcraft on me from the inside out. She was
Mhm.
like, all that stuff you've been holding, all that shame, all that good, let's clean it out so you
Mhm.
can make room for me. So
Okay.
it was a painful purge, but that connected me with my therapist, and it also helped me to start being honest with my mom about what I was navigating, and in turn she was honest about what she had navigated. So I'm like, girl, you didn't live through some of these things. That's when our dynamic shifted and we became grown women together. um,
Yes.
so I think having those honest conversations with our mothers, our caregivers, if we can, is a starting point, because I recognize, like you said, everything's not new. Sometimes we just have to search for it. My mom had a lot of the answers.
Yeah.
Had a lot of the recipes for healing. Uh,
Yeah.
excuse me. And so did my therapist, and so did my great grandmother and my grandmother. And so I had to connect with them. So I would say sit at the feet of the elders if
Yeah.
you're feeling disconnected, to start, and be honest about what you're hearing, because they have wisdom.
Yes. Yes. You are reminding me of my relationship with Aziza, with my Z,
Yes.
and how it's evolving. It's beautiful. I couldn't have wished for anything greater. Sometimes remembering is not moving backward, Raina. Sometimes remembering is how we move forward.
Yes.
You know, tonight reminded us that healing is not always becoming something different. Sometimes it's about remembering what was always ours.
Mm.
Perhaps we carry forward what we carry forward is not merely a tradition, not merely memory, not merely story. Perhaps what we carry forward is the possibility of healing, you know, the possibility of truth. I'm a
Yeah.
big proponent for truth and reality, you
Yeah.
know, and the possibility that future generations inherit something more whole than we did.
Yeah.
So, Raina, I got this powerful last question for you. If you could leave one seed
Mm.
for future generations, what would you hope grows from it?
Mm. Wow. I think that I will plant this seed for the future generation, but also in honor of my matrilineal, the women in my maternal lineage, and that will be the seed of self compassion.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Self-compassion.
Yeah.
Before we close, I want to once again acknowledge my co-founder and co-host, Michelle Diamond, the voice. I can see her tears through this interview because I'm sure she cried when we cried. I can feel her energy about self-compassion, you know. And while she could not be with us tonight due to family emergency, her presence, her vision, and her heart remain woven throughout this platform and this conversation. Michelle, we are holding space for you and your family. And to our audience, thank you for joining us for another meaningful conversation. If tonight's conversation resonated with you, please feel free to subscribe and share. More importantly, this is Infinite Perspectives, where voices become vision. Thank you, Raina.
Thank you, Auntie Linda.
How you gonna change the things around you? Oh, what you gonna? Oh, when you gonna hear his revelation?